We are in Duties of the Heart, Serving God, Chapter 5, Part 5, page 289. And it says, "It is now fitting that we explain the forms of stimulus provided by the intellect. Until the end of this gate, we will use a question and answer format, as this is the most suitable for clear exposition of the topic we are investigating. The intellectual stimulus is God's reminder to man through his intellect to know him and to recognize the signs of his wisdom. It comes from Hashem to one who has made the Torah the light of his path. When he attains to the limit of his intellectual ability and the utmost clarity of his perception, when he yearns to gain the favor of the Almighty and to ascend the heights of the pious, and turns his heart away from the wonders and distractions of this world." Very important thing, not to let the small things get to you. These are the means by which a man can realize the aim of the intellectual stimulus. He should have a clear grasp of what the Creator has implanted in the human mind, namely the adoration of the truth and the contempt for falsehood, preference for righteousness and avoidance of injustice, repaying the good with goodness and praising them, while repaying the wicked with wickedness and condemning them, being on peaceful terms with people and acting kindly toward them, returning praise for favors, reward for kindnesses, and punishment for wickedness, weighing the superiority of one reward over another, the severity of one punishment compared with another, and forgiving offenders when they truly repent. This is all a matter of, again, keeping a cheshbon, an accounting for yourself. Like Pirkei Avot says, think about what the outcome of your actions. If you consider the outcome of your actions, you will not do that something that is wrong, and you'll choose to do something that is correct. Okay? When these concepts are clearly established in a man's soul, by the way of his intellect and the power of perception, his intellect will have become sound and his perception strong. And if God prompts him in regard to the right way for him, he will arouse his mind and soul to appreciate his favors toward him, God's favors toward him, and he will intensify his recognition of these favors. Very important to do that also, because you have a question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If we go back a little bit, it said punish the wicked.
Right.
So, what exactly a person has to do? I mean, how can we be humble at the same time and keep our faith in Hashem, and at the same time, kind of like listing all these things, punish the wicked?
Right. So you have a justice system. We can't assume the purpose of a justice system, a human justice, a court, is to press charges on a criminal and to do what's proper. We cannot rely upon God doing that, because that's not fair to God, as it were. God told us one of the things we have to do is establish a just legal system. So now if somebody is, by the rules of testimony, proven guilty, then we have to punish that person, even including the death penalty, whatever the penalty is going to be. That is our mandate as a group, as humans from God, that we have to take care of the world. Let's say, on the other hand, that the person has been proven innocent. Really, he's guilty, but he was proven innocent. So we have the rule of double jeopardy, that you cannot be tried for the same crime twice. And here we rely upon Hashem taking care of business. That's all. So if the guy got away with it once, that's up to Hashem. Because and the same way, by the way, if an innocent person is killed, so then we again say it went through the process. Years later, they find out he's innocent. So again, we would say that he was innocent. He may have been innocent for that crime, but he was guilty for some other crime, or Hashem would never have allowed him to be killed. Okay, so that's where we're fall to God's justice. But if somebody steals, they have to repay. I mean, these are all laws in the Torah. So we have to judge people according to what their actions are, and as best as we can. But let's understand something. It doesn't mean that I, as an individual, can punish in that sort of manner, can punish an individual. That I have no right to do. It has to go through the courts or something else. As a parent, when you're punishing your child or disciplining your child, which is really what you're doing, disciplining, there again, you have to have common sense with what you're doing. And you better be sure that you are correct with that. So the best story is that one of my kids did absolutely nothing wrong. Mamish was a tzaddik in this event. Yet we assumed he did something wrong. So we made him admit to what he did, even though he didn't do it. Until we found out later on, it became apparent that he didn't do it, that it was just something that happened. And so my wife apologized profusely to my poor child, but it was all the evidence pointed to him. And it wasn't him in the end. So it wasn't any of my kids, actually. So it was just, what happened was the TV was on a timer, an internal time we didn't know about. Because we picked up the TV from somebody else, and they never told us it's on the timer. So it went on Shabbos, and he was a little kid, and we said, "Did you turn it on?" Right? I didn't do it, and so finally, you can tell us, we won't be angry, and so we taught him to lie. And he finally gave in, because he realized, okay, my parents, the big people, want me to say yes. Yes. Okay, so don't do it again. And, it's very important. Okay, but he never did it. One day I was sitting in my office and the TV went on. I was like, what happened here? And then I realized it was a timer.
Wow.
But that is something like that. So you have to be careful when rendering judgment also, even against your children.
Does he remember that?
I doubt it. I mean, I want to say this. I don't think he as an adult remembers it. But that probably impacted on him very strongly as a child. And right, so the computer just understands that if parents say lie, save your skin. It's amazing how much. That's why I said on Shabbos that many things we do, we don't know why we're doing, because there's something in the back that taught us to do that action. And so we know, we just follow it. That's why if I could ever walk it back and figure out, why I reacted in a certain manner, whatever that is, then I can conquer that. If I never walk it back, I can't conquer it, because I don't know I don't know why my programming is that way. And by the way, that's what we call it. We call it programming. My program doesn't register that. It's like, I'll never forget, there was a kid who was when I was teaching. So he would read during my class. He would read English books. I was giving Judaic, he was reading English. And my principal told me, no, he needs that. He's ADHD. So he's on a special program, blah, blah, blah. Good. So I said, how am I supposed to grade him? Don't worry about it. Okay, don't worry. Then he bothered me anyway. But then I saw him later on in the hallway one day. And I said to him, he was reading, so I said, Tzaddik, I don't know his name anymore, so for lack of better terms, Tzaddik, I have to ask you a question. He said, yeah, Rabbi, what's wrong? So I said, how is it that you can concentrate so much on this book, and you can stick with it throughout all the noise and everything else, but when it comes to simple listening, you can't do it? So he smiled an impish smile. I'll never forget it. He said, because my doctors told me this is my anchor. He played the system. I'm not saying he didn't have anything wrong with him, but he learned how to play the system. And so he could do what he wanted. He had a good time in school. He was really not responsible for anything. They would push him through the grades. He's a smart kid, but he did what he wanted. And all because they told him, you have a problem, you can't concentrate, blah, 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 you need drugs. So I'll be on drugs, I'll do it. Whatever you want. As long as I can read my book, I don't care. He loved his books. He was an avid reader. He loved to read his books, but he didn't want to do his schoolwork. That he didn't want to do.
Was it 1980s?
I was teaching in it could have, no, yeah, it could have been late 80s, 90s. I forget where he was. That was my first job. Yeah, so that would have been, that was my first job, right. That would have been the 80s, yeah.
Yeah, I seem to remember when my brother in public school, so he started teaching in 69. It must have, I don't know, it was in the 70s or 80s that he talked about, said, they're looking for equal outcomes. And I think they finally threw that system out.
Yeah, like I said, that's why if you can go back and figure it out, you can change yourself. That's all I'm saying. So when he tries to recount them, so that answers your question? Okay. Okay, so when he tries to recount them and grasp them in his mind, and he cannot do it because they are so all-encompassing and abounding, constant and continuous, he will demand of his soul what his mind recognizes obligatory, repaying benefactors with good and choosing justice, and he will resolve to repay the Almighty. May he be exalted for all the abundant good he has showered upon him. Now, of course, okay, he's going to say, and when he realizes that he doesn't have the power to do so, namely to repay the Hashem, and that the Creator does not need him. That's another thing, by the way. Most people who give you something want something in return. Even if it's just respect, they want something. It's never for free. That's why they say there's no such thing as a free meal. Okay? They always want something. So what happens? But the Hashem doesn't need him. So he will be bound to humble himself and to be lowly and small in his own sight. And this doesn't mean that you have to make yourself small and lowly in other people's sights. Okay, you don't want to do that because then it becomes a chilul Hashem. If you're a tzaddik, if you're acting properly, and suddenly I'm worthless, I'm this and that, and people are seeing that, well, it doesn't shine well or bode well for Torah, because who wants to be constantly depressed that I'm worthless, I'm worthless, I'm worthless? Or as they would say, the old joke of, I forget which, I think it was Navardic or the other, I forget. There was two schools of Musar. One which always said, I'm nothing, I'm nothing, I'm nothing. And the other one said, you're everything. So the school that said you're nothing, so there was, you would practice every day. So some guy just walked into the yeshiva, and he's learning there, and he's reading, I'm nothing, I'm worthless, and this, and that. And so somebody who's been learning there for 2 years said, look at the chutzpah of this guy. He's here only 2 weeks, and he thinks he's nothing. So again, you have to be smart with what you're doing too. In your mind, you can do it. Okay, afterwards, so if you do that afterwards, he will solicit his mind concerning those actions, which will enable him to draw near and come close to Hashem, in order that they may serve as a substitute for the return that is due to him. His mind will then guide him on the straight path in this regard. So, number one, we have to always recognize that Hashem does everything good for us. That whatever Hashem is doing is, again, for our good. Then, if we start thinking about all the good that we recognize as good, by the way. Now remember, there's two different things. In other words, everything God does for me is good. So I get a cold, that's good. Lose your voice, that's good. Whatever. Have sniffles, that's good. But we have to convince ourselves that that's good. On the other hand, when you hit the mega box, or your job is going well, you get a pay raise, or whatever the case is going to be, you get an A on your exams, that's good. You recognize that as good, correct? Your husband pays you a compliment. That's really good. Okay? Or your wife says, great job. Again, not meaning it in a negative manner, but again, all those, your spouse compliments you, your children say, I love you. All these things, that's what you're shooting for in the end. But Hashem doesn't need any of that. He's just doing it because he's our creator. And by the way, if you think about it from a parental point of view, when our kids, I've said it many times, our kids, as I can never repay my parents, my children can never repay me. It's an impossibility. No matter what they do, they can never repay me because I brought them into this world. With the help of God, of course. But I brought them into this world. So how can you repay me for that? Regardless of how miserable you may think your life is, you're still living. You still have the opportunity to mitzvot. You have the opportunities are in front of you. You have them. It's up to you to take them. That's all. But that is something you can never pay me back for. On top of that, I took care of you when you were just born and you couldn't take care of yourself. You couldn't feed yourself. I made sure, as a parent, that you were fed. So for all of those things, I took you to school on your first day, or the old joke of the parent following and sending his child first day to school. You go ahead and you walk. You're going to walk to school by yourself. And the kid, oh, I'm so great, I'm walking myself. Meanwhile, the father's hiding behind a bush here, the bush there. I don't want the kid to see me, but still following that child. I'll never forget when I was reading Torah in my uncle's shul. Okay, so what happened was I had to walk. It wasn't the best area of the world that I was walking. I was maybe 25, 26. I wasn't already adult. And what he did was he followed me behind or ahead, sometimes ahead with the car. So that in case somebody would jump me, I guess you could either back up or pull forward, whatever the case was going to be, and kill somebody. I don't know. I was trying to figure out, what are you going to do? I couldn't figure it out, but I never asked him. He thought he was doing me a toiva, but so I didn't say anything to him. And I couldn't do what you want. But I remember but he also would have had to deal with my father if chas v'shalom something would have happened, and that's probably that's probably what he felt. I mean, my father wouldn't have. What can my father do? You know, it was a no-win situation, but it was a protective sort of thing, and that's what Hashem does for us. We don't see Hashem because of the veil, because of the curtain, but really Hashem is watching us and, taking care of us, and that again is something that we don't always appreciate. So now we come to the question and answer period. The mind asks the soul, is it clear to you and firmly understood that you are pledged to your Creator for His kindness and belong to Him because of His abundant grace and great favor? The soul says yes. The soul doesn't talk much here. The soul says yes. The mind, is it your intention to repay at least part of what you owe to the Creator? The soul says yes. The mind, but how is this possible for you when your longing for Him is weak? For only he who longs for health can bear the bitterness of the medicine, but he who does not long for health will not submit to the severity of the treatment. Think about all those times when you tried to give your kids medicine, or you guys took the medicine, and it was horrible. And you said, rather the sickness than the medicine. Okay, because it's just so disgusting. I don't want, if you really think about it, the people who chas v'shalom have cancer, and they get their treatments of chemo, they say that treatment is worse than the cure. I hopefully nobody will ever know that here, and that's certainly including me. But that's what they say. It's horrible that your hair falls off, but just the vomiting and everything else that goes with it, it's just horrible. So again, what do you want more? Do you want the health, or do you want to give in? So that's really what goes on there. The soul says, my desire is strong, and my concern is great to repay as much as I can of what I owe God. Therefore, continue to encourage me. Fine. The mind says, if you're telling the truth in what you are saying, the treatment may be successful in your case. But if the truth is not as you put it, you will succeed only in deceiving yourself. For when a patient lies to his physician, he only deceives himself, wastes the physician's efforts, and aggravates his illness. What happens? You go to a doctor, and the doctor says, I remember I did this. The doctor said to me, why are you coming to me? I said, I just want a physical. He says, and he was a big cancer doctor. He happened to be one of my congregants. So he said, no, it has to be something wrong with you. So why should be something wrong? He said, because then I can find it. If you just say a checkup, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. I just happen to trip over something. If something's wrong, you go to a doctor. If nothing's wrong, don't go to a doctor. This was a doctor saying that to me. I was like, whoa. I never heard that before. And here you go to the doctor, it's a free checkup, whatever, the insurance is paying for you. But really, they don't know what they're looking for. They tell you. I tell them I have this ache, that ache. Oh, we can look at I told I'll never forget. I always tell the story too. When I told the doctor it hurts when he touched there, he said it's your gallbladder. I said wrong. Guess again. I already had that out. Try it one more time. Yeah. I said read the report I make. At least it sounded intelligent. But okay. Here they didn't do that stupid mistake. But but it's a very important thing. So if I'm lying to the physician or I don't tell everything. By the way, this is something else. Let's say you called up in Makubal, a rabbi who was supposedly connected to Hashem more than we are. Okay. So what happens? He says to you, so what can I do for you? And your response is, you're the Makubal, you tell me. Right? That's not it was stop playing the game. If you have something that's bothering you, tell me what it is, whatever the rules are, and then we can work on that. We can go. But if you're just going to tell me, you figure it out on your own, because I'm a cool ball on this or that, like going to the doctor. Tell me what's wrong with me. I challenge you. I'm not going to do it. It's not going to work that way. Okay? So that's why I'm saying don't waste the time. So the soul says, and how can it be determined whether my longing is strong or weak? You're telling me I have to really be serious about this. I hold I'm serious. Daniel holds you serious. I asked him, you study? He says 100%. Only he knows what that 100% is. What?
Did I say 100%? I thought I said last time you asked me. I thought it was 10%.
Don't worry about it. I'm picking on you. Okay. 50% maybe. Okay. There you go. It's on for everybody to see. So don't indict yourself more. Okay. Well, okay. So I'm just picking on you. That's all. So the point is, how do you know whether it's weak or strong? I went to work, right? So did you do your best job? I did my best job. Are you lying to yourself? How do I know if I'm lying to myself? That's what the mind is saying. That's the soul saying. How can you make that determination? So the mind says, if your longing for God comes after the clear realization of how great is the debt you owe him, how little it is in your power to repay him, and that your neglect of it brings you ruin, while your diligence in it secures your salvation in your life, then your longing is genuine and your desire ardent. But if not, it is false. Simple, again, it sounds simple, but it's really not. You really have to think about how great the debt is. How many people, and we've talked about this many times, will make a prayer and expect it to come true. And when it doesn't, say God doesn't answer prayers. God doesn't answer my prayers, even though the answer could be no, blah, blah, blah. But, what are we expecting? It's a candy machine. I put my money in the candy machine. I should get my candy, pull the lever, and get it out, right? That's what prayer is. I go to pray. I made a mishaberach. I wanted the person to get healthy. And lo and behold, the person died, or the person got sick, or whatever it is. So God didn't listen. No. It doesn't work like that. It's not a candy machine. And so again, that's what he's saying. If you realize the debt, God doesn't have to give us a darn thing. Right? If your parents didn't give you one thing more today, some people, Baruch Hashem, still have parents. So if your parents didn't give you one more thing, you still couldn't pay them back. I want to think about that for a second. You still couldn't pay them back. Okay? And then so the soul says, so as long as I am prompted by the history of former ages gone by, my desire was never other than weak, and my longer was a deception. And to the truth of what you have spoken clearly, it became clear to me intellectually. At first, it became clear to me by way of the Torah's inspiration, and afterwards by way of rational demonstration. It was then that my longing became genuine and my desire pure. So the mind says, if what you have said is true, then bear with the pain of the treatment and endure the bitterness of the medicine and its unpleasantness, after first giving up the bad food to which you have grown accustomed. What is the bad food to which I have grown accustomed? Now the soul is getting defensive. What do you bother me for? It is a contemptible quality which has overpowered you from the start, and forces that have strengthened it from the earliest years of your growth. By the way, what's the biggest thing when you go to the doctor? When you go to the doctor in the old days, probably still to this very day, they ask the person, do you smoke? And the person says, yeah, of course I smoke. You have to give up smoking. No. But it's killing you. No, I don't care. Right? I don't want to give it up. Then they say, you really should give it up. Well, okay, how do I give it up? You have to get the e-cig, all these other. I don't want to do that. I don't like the flavor. Blah, blah, blah. They go through the whole thing. Give up soda. I don't want to give up soda. What do you call it? Pop. Give up pop. I don't want to give up pop. Give up McDonald's. I don't want to give up McDonald's. So what do you want to do? I want to be healthy. I want to be healthy. So you can do exercise? No. But not everybody does exercise. People eat pork. People eat this. And they live to long lives and they smoke. I read a story in the online, whatever. Okay, but that's one individual. You want to do that? Well, if not her, why me? Why not me? I mean, that's where everybody comes from. So that's why but that's what we all get defensive about. What do you want me to give up? Why should I give anything up? Right? Why should I take the medicine? So that's why the mindset is it is a contemptible quality which is overpowered from the start, and the forces that you have strengthened it from the earliest years of your growth. So the soul says, which quality is this, and what are the forces that strengthen it? You can see that the Rav Bachya was having fun with this. Okay, so he's having this conversation with him. So he says, the mind says, you have many contemptible qualities, but their root and foundation are two. One of them is love of bodily pleasures. You love eating, drinking, having sexual relations, and other bodily needs. You have acquired this quality from your bad neighbor, namely your body. Your body, that is the physical part of us. We need to feed it, we need to do all these things, but at the same time, our body should be a servant to the soul, and not the soul is servant to the body. The second quality is the love of power and status, arrogance, haughtiness, and jealousy. This is what leads you to fall short in properly repaying your benefactor. You acquire this quality from your neighbors, among whom you have grown up, namely your brothers and relatives. Everybody wants what the other guy has. That's communism, by the way.
That describes a lot of politicians too.
Absolutely. But that's where all these movements came from. Communism, socialism, democracy, capitalism. Capitalism, as long as it works for me, is good. If it doesn't work, if it works against me, I don't like it. I don't want to be the guy that has to work for everybody. I want to make the big bucks. Okay? And socialism, you have what I want, so therefore I want it from you. And so on and so forth. That's where everything's coming from, jealousy. And it's all coming from lack of bitachon in Hashem. Again, that's what it always comes back to. Okay? But that's what he's saying. You learn this from your surroundings. You think it's natural. You think that's who you are. That's not who you are. Your soul is pure. Our soul is pure. And that's what's going on. The soul says, and what are the forces that I need to keep far away from? The mind says, the forces of the first quality are excesses in eating and drinking. That means, by the way, what happens when we eat and drink, right? Even for you. When you eat and drink, do you always stop after your first plate, or you go for more?
Go for more.
There you go. You go for more. Why do we go for more? Because we're afraid that it's not going to be there the next time. If you ever think about that, why are you eating more? You're not hungry. Your hunger was taken away after your first plate, a normal plate. I'm not talking about the piled up plate. I'm talking about the first couple of bites. If you have a sandwich, you're done.
Well, it depends.
No, you're
if
done.
You
You're
go for
done.
A workout, like if you run like a marathon, then you're gonna eat a little bit more than just a sandwich.
Okay, so you have a little more, but you're not. But by the way, if you just ran a marathon and you're eating, then you're going to gain the most amount of weight you ever did. You have to wait until your body calms down, and then you can eat. But most people don't do that. I know when I work out, and if I'm eating right after that, I'm going to have more food than if I would just wait 45 minutes to an hour after that. Then my body's not saying I'm craving so much. And that's why people, when they go to work out and swim and everything else, they take a drive to Krispy Kreme. And I'm hungry, I need sugar, I need this, I need that. Okay. And they'll eat 2-3 donuts because they need the energy. And they wonder why they don't lose weight. I don't know. I don't get it myself. Right. But that's really, again, that's part of what's going on, where we don't, we don't get that. So we have the excesses of eating and drinking. Then dress. How many times do you go into your closet and say, what should I wear? And you move thing after thing after thing. How many clothes do you need after already, right? If you're a woman, 5 closets, 10 closets, how many do you need? But if you're a man, I went to the convention, right? So everybody looked at me and laughed because I only had a suitcase about this big for 4 days. And they said, how do you learn to pack like that? I said, me? I'm nothing. My father used to have a black paper bag, a brown paper bag, like you have shopping. I said, he was in the armed forces. Me, I'm already the next generation. I can't do that. But other people, they had to take it like for 4 days, 3 suitcases. What are you taking with you? What are you going on a 3-hour trip? What is going on here? A 3-hour tour, you're going to end up on an island. You're really afraid. I mean, if the plane goes, it goes. You're lost. But people do that, and it's unbelievable what they do. But that's, again, dress. How much do you need? Sleep. People love sleeping. Oh, sleeping is so beautiful. But really, if you sleep too much, it's no good for you. You're supposed to only get 8 hours at tops, but you have to get within 6 to 8 hours, whatever it's going to be. Rest and leisure and the like. People love to rest and they love their leisure time. That's why it's, I think it was Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. The kids complained to him, students complained to him that some people were being mevatel Torah. They weren't learning Torah. They were playing basketball. She said, it's beautiful. They should play basketball. They should play basketball for an hour. Set the clock for an hour. I think an hour. Set the clock for an hour. And they said to him, but Rebbe, an hour of not learning Torah. He said, how have I that they only spend the hour wasting? Waste time for an hour. Set its time for Zaman Patela. And then you go back. That's all. But people like doing that. The force of the second quality are excessive talking and too much socializing with other people, trying to please them, loving praise and honor from them, jealousy of their worldly possessions, pressuring them in regard to their property, ridiculing them and harping on their faults and so forth. By the way, this is something that Balei Teshuvah have to put up with continually. It's a constant argument. When you become a Baal Teshuvah, your parents feel like you have rejected them, okay? And your friends, of course, feel like your old friends feel like you rejected them. So they will ridicule you, and they'll say, "Oh, look at the Mr. Frumkite is coming." Oh, they'll make fun of you. Yesterday that you were wearing that funny hat, that ski yarmulke on your head. Today you are what? Do you think you're super Jew? And blah blah blah. Okay, fine. So that you're a Baal Tshuva, you're getting married for that. You have commitments. Great. Then what happens is, Mr. Hashem, you get married, you have a child, or children in general. You have a child. So what happens? Children. By the way, the child of a Baal Tshuva is not a Baal Tshuva. The child of a Baal Tshuva is from birth. They're going to yeshiva. They're doing everything else. So wherever you're putting them through, even homeschoolers. It's a different thing than I'm coming to religion on my own. You're born into it. You were born into it. That's it. So you're a from birth guy or person. So now what happens is you, Mr. From birth, start to read secular books. You start to think, you see certain things and you're independent. I mean, kids are independent. And they talk about Hollywood. They talk about this. And so what happens? Oh, the grandparents, the kvelling. Kvelling is, they're how do you translate kvelling? They're so happy. They're in seventh heaven. That's kvelling. Okay? They're kvelling. Oh, my grandchild is going to follow me. They rebelled, just like you, tzaddik, rebelled against me as a parent. Your children are going to rebel against you. And they are so happy. They are feeling, we're going to show you that religiosity is wrong and that you're Meshigan for doing it. And you're thinking, you're happy my kids are going off the derech? What's wrong with you people? I gave you Jewish grandchildren. and you're happy, you want them rather to be non-Jewish grandchildren. But you can't say that to your parents because like a derech eretz. So and so on and so forth. But you have them getting you on one side, on the other side. It's very hard for a Baal Teshuva, in reality, to maintain that exuberance all the way through. It's the ultimate test. And by the way, normally those kids don't go off the derech. They normally don't leave Judaism. They have a fling, and then they come back. That's how it works. Because it's like the Amish springen. Spring or springen? Springen. Well, they go for 2 years. They have their flings, and they come back because they're used to that sort of thing. That's their home base. So most of these kids who will go off the derech, most of them will want to somehow reattach themselves to the derech. That's all. And we have to just love them and say the house is always open, sort of thing. But the point is that pressure, that ridiculing you is there. And that's what drives people away from improving themselves, of trying to work harder. What are you trying to do? Outdo me? You're trying to get a pay raise? That sort of thing. And it's very bad from what people do. Or they harp on their faults, and so on and so forth. If what you have said of your longing and great desire to make a repayment for the favors which God has bestowed upon you is true, then keep far away from you with all of your strength the forces and qualities that I have mentioned to you. Then I will promote you to another level of treatment. So first get rid of the negative parts of your life. Surround yourself with good friends who are going to encourage you to do that which is right. Don't worry about the praise. Don't worry about people honoring you. Don't do that. Don't work for that. It says in Pirkei Avot, if you chase after on it will run away from you. That basically says that. And by the way, you see that from the politicians. They are the best example of that. They're chasing. And what they end up doing is destroying their reputation. They originally had a good reputation. You know who it happened to? Cain. What's it? Harold, the black guy, Cain.
Yeah, I know.
I forget his first name. But everybody thought he was a tzaddik. Yeah. And then what happens? He ended up being accused of rape. And he dropped out of the race. What was his name? 999.
Oh, wait. Yeah.
Was it? Herman Cain.
Herman, yeah.
That was 999, right?
That was an 08.
Yeah, okay. But I'm saying that his play was 999. That's all that. Get the 3 9s.
Yeah.
But here he was. Everybody called him a tzaddik. And I guarantee you, but what's the other guy, the Jewish guy?
Which year?
Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders. If Bernie Sanders would have gone further, again, he was a tzaddik. So what did they do? They came out, he's anti-Semite. Okay. Anything that he tried, he was a good independent guy. He was honest, supposedly. I don't know if he's honest. I never looked at his records to see what he does. But, he came out with supposedly a good reputation at first, and then, of course, you get ripped down. So, you don't want to chase after those things. So the soul said, it would be difficult for me to renounce these vices, since I've grown up with them for so long. Therefore, be kind enough to show me how this might be easier for me. Oh, we're already down the rabbit hole. I want it to be easier. Okay. Surely the mind says, that a sensible individual finds it easier to agree to the imputation of a part of his body and the loss of one of his limbs if it is attacked by some disease, which he fears will spread and affect his other limbs, when he understands the difference between the two alternative conditions and realizes the inequality of the two evils. So is it with you. If you want to make it easier for yourself to renounce that which is hard to relinquish, then take to heart and weight in your mind the good you will attain from the renunciation, as opposed to the evil which will befall you if you continue with it. Renouncing contemptible qualities difficult to part with will then be easier for you. In other words, you want to really do it, amputate yourself from your friends, cut yourself off from those negative things. So he says, what is the good? The soul says, what is the good that I will attain from renouncing it, and the evil that will befall me if I continue with it? The mind says, the good will be your tranquility and relief from the gloomy darkness of this world, the pleasures of which are mingled with sadness, its lust brought to an end. This will bring you to recognize with the full force of your recognition that the place of your repose, the life hereafter, to work for it and to be concerned about it. This is one class among the many classes of virtues on which your salvation and your life depend. The evil is recurring worry, compounding sorrow, and constant grieving at the non-fulfillment of your worldly desires, which even if you were to attain them, would only bring you what is futile, fleeting, and transitory, for it will undoubtedly pass on to someone else. What's the example? You go to work your whole life, then you drop dead, and your kids take your money. What did you do that for? What was the use? Well, and that's why you have the license plate. This is my retirement. I'm using my retirement money. What is it? This is my kid's retirement money. Something like that. That's when they get the Cadillac. You see it all through Florida. This is my kid's retirement money, whatever. Okay. So nothing will remain with you of this world, nor will you secure the next world. What is more, despite your lengthy efforts, you will fail to attain your desires. So the soul answers, I have understood what you have said, and I hope that as a result, it will now be easier for me to renounce what has previously been difficult for me to part with. Continue now to lead me on the second part of the curative methods, which will teach me what I want to learn of the service of God. And we'll have to stop there.